This screencast is going to talk about terminating and repeating decimals. So there are two types of decimals. The first type is a terminating decimal, and the second is a repeating decimal. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it means to terminate. So if you think about terminating something or to terminate, it is a verb and it means to bring to an end. So if you think about something ending, that means that something is terminating. So if we think about terminating decimal, so if we are defining the idea of a terminating decimal, it is a decimal that ends or stops. We're going to think about decimals that end. So taking a look at terminating decimal, we're going to go ahead and talk about how we would change each of these decimals into, each of these fractions into a decimal using our calculator. There is the idea of using long division, but for right now we're just going to focus on using our calculator to help us. So in order to use our calculator, we're going to go ahead and turn it on, and we're going to remember or think about what operation does the fraction bar mean. Well, the fraction bar means division. So really all we're going to type into our calculator is 7 divided by 8. Once I type in 7 divided by 8 on my calculator, I should get the decimal 0.875. Because the decimal stops after the 5 in 0.875, we know that this is a terminating decimal. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our second example, which is 3/5, and we're going to do the same thing, 3 divided by 5. We're going to type that in on our calculator, 3 divided by 5, and we should get 0.6 as our decimal. Once again, we know that is a terminating decimal because it stops. There are no more numbers after the 6, and it just is one number. Taking a look at 5/16, once again, typing in on our calculator, 5 divided by 16. You would get 0.3125. Even though that is a longer decimal, it has 4 numbers behind the decimal point, this would still be a terminating decimal because it stops after the 5. The last example that I want to take a look at is a mixed number. And with a mixed number, this is going to actually become a mixed decimal. So basically what a mixed decimal is it is a decimal that is attached to a whole number. So because we know that we have this 1 here out in front as a whole number, we are also going to have a 1 in our decimal. Now we just need to focus on changing 17/25 into our decimal equivalent. So we're going to type in 17 divided by 25 on our calculator. I get 0.68. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine my 1 and my 0.68 to get my final answer of 1.68. Once again, that is my final answer, and it is a terminating decimal because it does not continue, it stops. The second type of decimal that we're going to look at is a repeating decimal. So as we did with terminate, I want to look at our definition for repeat. So the definition to repeat or for repeat is to do something again either once or a number of times. So when we're thinking about a repeating decimal, basically what that means is that the decimal or a number within the decimal is repeating, okay? It kind of repeats itself over and over and over and over again. So let's take a look at our first example. We have 2/3. So once again, we're going to write this as a division problem. 2 divided by 3. When I type that in on my calculator, I get 0.66666 and so on. This is our idea of a repeating decimal. The way that I would end up writing 0.66666 is just 0.6 with a bar above the 6 because the 6 is repeating, so that bar represents the repeating number. If I take a look at the second example, 1 4/9, once again I know that this is a mixed number, so it's going to become a mixed decimal, meaning that I already know that my 1 is going to be in front, and now I can focus solely on my 4/9. So if I type in 4 divided by 9 on my calculator, I know that I'm getting 0.4444 and so on. So my final answer will be 1.4 repeating. Finally, looking at 5/6, I'm going to do 5 divided by 6 on my calculator. And in this example, I get 0.83333 and so on. So notice that in this example, the 8 is not repeating. However, the 3's are repeating. So when we go to write this, we have to be really careful. We're going to put 0.83, but our repeating line, our bar notation, is only going to go above the number 3 because that's the only number that is repeating. So I want you to try these 4 examples, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to change each of these fractions into a decimal and then identify whether it is a terminating decimal or a repeating decimal, and you're more than welcome to just kind of identify them by using the T or the R to help you. So if you take a look at the screen, you're going to see that each of these fractions are now changed into their decimal equivalent. Number 1 and 2 were both terminating decimals, and numbers 3 and 4 were both repeating decimals. The final thing that I want to talk about in this video is negative decimals. So we've talked a lot about rational and integers, rational numbers and integers, so obviously we're going to throw in some negative numbers as well to make sure that you're comfortable with this. When you're working with negative decimals or changing a negative fraction into a decimal, it is the same procedure, the same steps as you would use for changing a positive fraction into a decimal. You're going to just kind of take a step that's going to help you make sure you get to the right answer, okay? So we want to go ahead and we see that we have a negative sign in front of the 2/9, so we want to go ahead and put a negative sign in our answer, and we're going to now take our 2/9 and we're going to divide it into our calculator. So if we take 2 divided by 9 on our calculator, we get 0.2222 and so on. So my answer would then be negative 0.2 repeating. We want to make sure that we have that negative sign in front, or else our answer is going to be wrong. If we take a look at our second example is negative 2 1/5. Once again, we want to make sure we put our negative sign in our answer ahead of time. And because this is once again a whole number or a mixed number, we're going to go ahead and transfer that 2 over to our decimal. And then we're going to take our 1/5 and we're going to type that in on our calculator. So 1 divided by 5, and I get 0.2. So think about what type of decimal is that. That's a terminating decimal. So my final answer would end up being negative 2.2 repeating. So once again, whenever you are changing fractions to decimals, you want to use the idea of dividing, and you want to take the numerator divided by the denominator, and that will get you your decimal answer. Okay, so numerator divided by denominator will get you your decimal.